CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference. Today marked day one of the annual three-day gathering of conservative activists, conservative elected officials, conservative media figures, and various other conservative types, many of whom we'll be discussing later on in the show. This year, the biggest reception for anyone came in response to a surprise, unannounced guest.
There is one man in particular we all know who certainly has taught me what it means to have the courage of your convictions. Often before big speeches like this one, I ask his opinion, I seek his advice. Well, today, instead, I brought him with me.
A welcome like that's almost enough to want to make me run for office again.
You know who was cheering louder than the Republicans in that hall? Democrats. Democrats all across the country going, Cheney, Palin, 2012. Oh, please do it. Please do it. Mr. Cheney very much enjoying himself. He did vow not to actually run again. But for politicians who probably will run, their courting of the CPAC audience today did not apparently extend to making sure that what they told that audience was true. One of the serial offenders today was former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney.
Let's ask the Obama folks why they say no. No to a balanced budget, no to reforming entitlements, no to malpractice reform.
You want to see President Obama saying no to medical malpractice reform?
Now, I don't believe malpractice reform is a silver bullet. But I've talked to enough doctors to know that defensive medicine may be contributing to unnecessary costs. So I'm proposing that we move forward on a range of ideas about how to put patient safety first and let doctors focus on practicing medicine.
Lots of people really do say no to malpractice reform, at least as Republicans have proposed it. President Obama is not one of those people. But do go on, Mr. Romney.
No to tax cuts that create jobs.
No to tax cuts. You know that giant stimulus package that just had its one-year birthday yesterday? That was also one of the biggest tax cuts in American history. True. Well, while you're on a roll here, Mr. Romney, try giving national security politics a shot.
On our watch, the conversation with a would-be suicide bomber will not begin with the words, "You have the right to remain silent."
Unless, of course, that would-be suicide bomber is would-be suicide bomber Richard Reid, who was told that he had the right to remain silent roughly 5 minutes after he was arrested back in 2001 when Republicans were running the show. Mitt Romney was not alone in this insult to his audience's intelligence today. Here's Republican Congressman Thaddeus McCotter of Michigan, for example. Thaddeus McCotter is supposed to be one of the Republican Party's big wonks. He's chairman of the Republican House Policy Committee.
I've heard that the Republican Party and the conservative movement constitutes the party of no. I think a look at the facts should disabuse people of that notion. When the American people asked for fiscal integrity and discipline in government spending, the Democrats said no.
I understand why Mr. Charisma wants to say that it's Republicans who are the champions of fiscal integrity and discipline in government spending, but as long as those phrases, fiscal integrity and discipline in government spending, still have meaning as phrases in English, Republicans cannot call themselves that when they're the folks who passed the totally unfunded Medicare Part D Prescription Drug Act in 2003, for example, along with two equally unfunded but ginormous Bush tax cuts, which blew the deficit sky high. And if we're going to talk about fiscal integrity, there is also the matter of the accounting tricks that the government of George W. Bush used to keep two massively expensive wars off the government books, a practice that the Democrat who succeeded Mr. Bush is now ending.
When the American people asked for smaller deficits and a reduction of the debt, the Democrats said no.
I know this pains you guys, but the truth about who grows debt while in office is exactly the opposite of what Mr. McCotter would like to make the CPAC audience clap for. In the last 30 years, it's been Republican presidents who have exploded the debt at record rates. The patron saint of fiscal conservatism, Ronald Reagan, grew the debt by 189% while he was in office. It was also 7 Republican senators who recently single-handedly stopped Congress from creating a bipartisan deficit commission. Thanks for playing, though, Congressman McCotter. Today's roster of speeches wasn't all about insulting the intelligence of the audience at CPAC. It was also an educational experience. For instance, did you know that President Obama created this mythical healthcare crisis for his own political benefit?
You create the perception of a crisis in order to be able to ride to the rescue and achieve your self-indulgent purposes of controlling the distribution of income in America. So whether it is the crisis in health care, which is a notion you're getting away with peddling despite the fact that America has the greatest health care in the world.
Yes! According to former Republican Majority Leader Dick Armey, Mr. Obama has created the perception of a crisis when it comes to health care. Want to see what that fake crisis looks like? In 1960, healthcare spending was about 5% of our GDP. In 1970, it was up to about 7%. By 1980, 9%. By 1990, it was up to 12%. By 2000, we were spending 14% of our GDP on healthcare. By last year, our healthcare spending constituted more than 17% of our entire economic output as a nation, and that's counting everything. In 10 years, it's projected to be 1 out of every $5 in the entire American economy. That's the crisis President Obama has apparently created out of thin air for his own political gain. He apparently started working on this in 1970 when he was 9 years old. It was very precocious. One of the most frequently used bash President Obama applause lines today was offered up early on by one of the day's first speakers, Florida Senate candidate and Tea Party favorite, Marco Rubio.
You know, a week ago, we didn't know we were going to make it here. We were watching all the images of that winter weather, this extraordinary blizzard that even impacted government. I don't know if you know this, but the Congress couldn't meet to vote on bills. The regulatory agencies couldn't meet to set new regulations either. And the president couldn't find anywhere to set up a teleprompter to announce new taxes.
I mean, they do kind of got him here. Can you believe that guy uses a teleprompter? Did you notice the very, very beginning of that clip? Very beginning there. Oh, hey there, what's that? Hey there, hi there, hi there. What's that thing about people in glass houses, people behind glass teleprompters, making fun of teleprompters? Senator Jim DeMint, you want to give this one a shot too?
I think we've confirmed you can't govern from a teleprompter.
Says the guy reading off a pair of teleprompters. Woohoo! While totally lacking in self-awareness, Mr. DeMint did succeed in offering the CPAC crowd some of the reddest of the red meat that was thrown to them today.
We now see all too clearly that the hope and change the Democrats had in mind was nothing more than a retread of the failed and discredited socialist policies that have been the enemy of freedom for centuries all over the world.
The enemy of freedom. As I said before, CPAC is a big deal. This is where conservative politicians go to hone their messages, to align themselves with where the modern conservative movement is. And judging from the speeches at the podium today, the modern conservative movement, at least in the mind of its politicians, is in Washington. Thank you. It's nice to be here. I wish the roads were plowed better, but I'm still enjoying myself. Yeah. It seems notable that the politician who received the warmest welcome today was Dick Cheney. People lost their minds for Dick Cheney more than they did for Marco Rubio. Translate that into Republican politics for 2010.
I can't, because Dick Cheney doesn't have a future in Republican Party politics in 2010. What that would suggest was that Republicans in 2010 were going to, say, remember the good old days of the Bush-Cheney administration? I just don't think they're going to do that. I don't think that even in this heady atmosphere now for conservatives, they really think that recalling the Bush-Cheney years is a great idea, is a great way to take over the Congress in 2010 and set up a victory in 2012. So, but it's interesting. Cheney was clearly seen as something of a father's figure, if not a patron saint, for this group of activists there. Well, I just don't see where that goes.
To me, it's interesting, though, to see Cheney revered in this way, to see him really, and just in terms of the reaction today, rise above every other figure there. Obviously, he's not going to run again, although there might be some nostalgia for that in that room. But when he talks about the Bush legacy, both on fiscal matters and particularly on national security matters, he's saying, oh, secretly within the administration, you didn't know this, but I was against all this stuff that you guys are now running to the right of now. I was more fiscally conservative than Bush. I was more pro-torture than Bush. I was for not letting people out of Guantanamo, even though we let people out of Guantanamo. So he's almost running a shadow. He's proposing to the modern Republican Party they run a shadow Cheney presidency.